Lebanon has been devastated, of course, by the Israeli invasion and occupation, the conquering effectively of southern Lebanon. And although there is technically a ceasefire, it's a ceasefire with Israel, so it's only worth so much. The war is very much not over. And while the recent destruction in Lebanon has led to some frustration among the Lebanese with Hezbollah, which helped to spark this conflict, the New York Times went in, they spoke to a bunch of people on the ground, and what they found is a feeling of desperation that makes it kind of impossible for them to fully set Hezbollah aside. They may not like some of their moves, but they also don't like being conquered by Israel. And so it kind of puts them in a bind. And we have more, but Cenk, what are your 2 cents?
Yeah, so does Lebanon have a right to defend itself? Why are we calling Hezbollah the terrorist when Israel is attacking Lebanon, not the other way around? I don't see Hezbollah in Tel Aviv. But I do see the IDF in southern Lebanon. So I have a pretty good sense of who the terrorists are, and it is Israel. And I have a lot more to say about that. But also, is it surprising that the Lebanese would then rally around the only group defending their homes? But the morons and liars in American media are like, no, Israel is heavenly and beautiful, as they had to destroy all their homes and villages. And by the way, rob and loot all their homes and tape it. They had to do it. The disgusting terrorist Hezbollah daring to defend their own homes. Don't they know those are Israelis' possessions? Yeah, as you can tell, kiss my ass, American media, you liars. There's a giant terrorist called Israel. John, tell them what they're doing, and then how the Lebanese people are logically going, duh, Hezbollah is the only ones defending us.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, let's jump into this. So when initially Hezbollah fired on Israel in March, we're to start the conflict right there, okay? That helps the narrative. They're not doing it in response to being attacked over years by Israel. They started it right then. But anyway, okay, so that was the beginning of one round, I guess. So many among its support base questioned whether the latest outbreak of war was worth the cost. And in the South, those costs came into plain view. A lot of people have died. A lot of buildings have been destroyed. Most of those people who have died are civilians. A lot of the buildings that have been destroyed there was never a suspicion that it was Hezbollah. They're just destroying residential buildings. They're clearing it out like they cleared out Gaza. But anyway, this was Hezbollah's second major war with Israel in just 2 years. And among Lebanese that eventually returned south during the ceasefire, there was some disenchantment with the group's leadership. A consensus appeared to be emerging among the Shiite Muslims who make up Hezbollah's support base that they need a new political vanguard in Lebanon. But here is the issue. They're not ready to fully set aside Hezbollah. And the way that Israel is just like entrenching into southern Lebanon makes it even less likely to happen. With Israel declaring plans to occupy the south and Lebanese government forces making no move to counter Israeli troops, people saw Hezbollah fighters as their only hope of keeping their homes and land, because that's what's going on. That's the truth. There's nobody else helping them. Certainly the United States isn't helping them. So signs of the group apparently are very common. Billboards of slain fighters line the roads with the men's uniform portraits placed in the center of bright yellow Hezbollah flags. After the truce went into effect, hundreds gathered every day in villages to mourn Hezbollah fighters that had been killed in battle, which is hardly a sign that the population is ready to move on from this group. One woman, Rahab Tamara, said they were heroes. They were protecting us. She was at one of these funerals that had hundreds of other residents there. And so as I said, right now there's like technically a ceasefire, at least enough that some Lebanese have been able to go back to their homes. But Israel has, of course, continued to launch strikes on what it describes as Hezbollah targets, citing the terms of the truce that allow Israel to act in self-defense, which is always a loaded term here. Hezbollah has responded in turn, sporadically launching rockets towards Israel and Israeli forces on Lebanese territory, while reiterating that it will not lay down its weapons. And in fact, in the run-up to this show, Israel struck southern Lebanon, killing 10 people as a Hezbollah drone wounded 2 Israeli soldiers, which is the sort of math that we've gotten very used to in wars in this region. Cenk, what do you think?
Yeah, so New York Times getting a little bit better, at least like gave some context to Hezbollah in this story, so I guess I'll take it. But that first line that John read you is a constant theme in this story and in every New York Times story, when Hezbollah fired on Israel in March. Now that's purposeful, right? So the real context of that is that they did a ceasefire, after the pager explosion, etc. And after the ceasefire came into effect and before the Iran war, Hezbollah fired how many rockets into Israel? I mean, these are the dirty terrorists, right? So they probably murdered, slaughtered, and etc. Zero bombs. They completely abided by the ceasefire. How many bombs did Israel drop in Lebanon during the ceasefire? Well, they're the good guys, they're the angels, and they're just defending themselves. So of course, during the ceasefire, when the other side hasn't fired at all, Israel's gonna drop 0 bombs, right? Over 1,000 bombs. Okay, so there is a very clear terrorist group here, and it is obviously Israel. And they never listen to a ceasefire. They're constantly attacking their neighbors. And if it was self-defense, you go, okay, I defended myself and I go back within my borders. But look at that, hey, they just took another 6 miles into Lebanon, and they are planning to take all of southern Lebanon to the Litani River, and it's not me saying it, it's their government officials, including their defense minister, saying it. So they're saying to the American press, hey, this is not self-defense, we're gonna go murder them and take their lands and their home. And then the IDF soldiers are literally taping themselves, robbing every home and bringing it back. And they're like, we're robbing them, we're the criminals. And American press is like, I don't see it.
Look, one of the biggest problems with political media right now isn't just bias. It's how quickly the same story gets spun into 2 completely different realities depending on who's telling it. That's why I recommend Ground News. It's a website and app that pulls together reporting from across the political spectrum so you can compare how the same story is being covered, who's covering it, and what kind of narrative they're pushing. Take this story about Pete Hegseth refusing to rule out US troops on the ground in Iran. On Ground News, you can immediately see how differently outlets frame that same development. The Daily Signal downplays the danger by stressing that this isn't Iraq and that the war won't be endless. NBC, meanwhile, focuses on the key fact that Hegseth would not rule out American boots on the ground in Iran. Same story, 2 completely different realities. And Ground News makes that obvious right away. You can compare headlines side by side, see the bias distribution of the coverage, check the factuality ratings of the sources, and even see who owns the outlets behind the reporting. That matters because once you understand how stories are being framed, you start to see how public consent gets manufactured. Ground News also has a blind spot feed that highlights stories that one side of the political spectrum is barely covering. So you're not just trapped inside the version of the world your algorithm wants to feed you. If you're tired of being fed somebody else's narrative, I genuinely recommend Ground News. Go to ground.news/TYT or scan the QR code. Using our link gets you 40% off Ground News Vantage plan, and you can also gift a subscription directly through Ground News.
So when Hezbollah attacked in March, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And here's another thing that the New York Times and mainstream media never ever explain to their audience on purpose because they want to protect Israel. Why is all of this happening in the first place? Because, they hate Jews, those anti-Semitic terrorists, they're so irrational, those Muslim savages. Also the Christian savages, by the way, in Lebanon. But we try not to talk about that because then it'll make America angry and then Israel might have a harder time robbing us. Okay, so why are they doing all this? The occupation. Israel has occupied 5.5 million Palestinians for 58 brutal years. And yet the New York Times is like, what name so? Occupation, never heard of it. No, they're just Palestinian terrorists. They're all irrational anti-Semites. Hezbollah for no reason. What do you mean no reason? Do you know that when Israel first invaded Lebanon in 1982, because they keep invading Lebanon, at that point, Lebanon hadn't done anything. And you know what? Hezbollah didn't even exist. Hezbollah was formed to defend Lebanon against Israel's constant invasions. And they beat back Israel several times. And as they're fighting in their own territory right now, do you know how many civilians Hezbollah is killing Israeli civilians in southern Lebanon? 0, because there are no Israeli civilians. There are only IDF soldiers. And in a war, you're supposed to fight the soldiers. And that's what Hezbollah is doing. But our media comes in and goes, dirty savages, terrorists. But wait a minute, they're defending their homes. So Israel has the right to genocide in self-defense, has a right to steal their neighbor's land in self-defense. But the Lebanese literally, according to our press and our politicians, have no right to defend themselves. There's now Armenian Christian militias fighting Israel. Terrorists! mean terrorist, Dick? What do you mean terrorist? He's like, he's taking my home, he's taking my crap, he's taking my car, he's taking everything I've got, and he's videotaping it, and he's bragging about it. I'm not allowed to fight him? Should I just show up and have him murder me? And our press is like, of course, you dirty Christian and Muslim terrorist. Don't you know that you have to serve Israel and get slaughtered by them? Otherwise, we're gonna call you terrorists and blame you for it. No, Israel has an 83% civilian kill ratio, the worst of any terrorist organization in the world, and much worse than Hamas or Hezbollah. If we actually care about the definition of terrorism, we would obviously use it against Israel and about Israel. But our press is a bunch of giant liars who come out and go, oh, let's smear the Muslims. They're all bigots. And they're like, oh, well, let's make everybody hate the Muslims. That way Israel can take more of their land. Yes, New York Times reporters. Yes, CNN anchors. That's exactly what you look like, because you're a bunch of hypocrite liars.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.